Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Day 8 of the Brian Walsh trial was really about the two Annas that the jury is being asked to see and decide between. On the one hand, you've got New Year's Eve Anna, the glamorous real estate executive laughing in the kitchen, signing champagne bottles, taking selfies, hosting a cozy dinner party with her husband and her close friend. That's the Facebook version of this marriage. The we're fine, we're festive, we're winning picture that Brian Walsh wants the jury to hold on to. On the other hand, you got the December 29th Anna. This is the woman who talks to two friends, who goes out to karaoke with one and talks to the other on the phone. She breaks down. She says there are cracks in her marriage. She's exhausted. She's thinking about what this can mean legally, including whether she can move her kids to Washington, D.C., and whether Brian needs to take jail time on the federal art fraud case he's charged with, just so the family can move on. So today, the Commonwealth tried to use those two Annas to answer a really big question. Was this a happy marriage that suddenly ended in a freak, unexplained death? That's the defense side, right? Or was Ana on the verge of changing her life in ways that gave Brian Walsh a motive to murder her? Now, we heard from two key friends, Boston friend and realtor Jim Mutloo, who saw the New Year's Eve version of the marriage and also saw both that and the despairing version from 2 days earlier on December 29th. We also heard from DC friend Alyssa Kirby. She saw the exhausted, falling out of love version of Ana. And we got more surveillance video also of Brian's multiple trips for cleaning supplies, trash runs, and a very important detail about his supposedly lost phone. And the Commonwealth rested. Their case is over. We are about to hear the defense case. We'll preview that, talk a little bit about what we might expect. So let's walk through what Jim and Alyssa actually said. Now, and how the judge actually limited some of what they said to state of mind evidence, how it was carefully kind of cut down, and how both sides are going to spin these two very different Annas and what they'll present to the jury. If you would, please hit that like button. That will really help the video. It picks it up with the YouTube algorithm. And also, if you aren't subscribed, we would love to have you subscribe to come back for more. So let's put in the video and take a listen to what happened today at trial. Let me start first by saying, though, the person you're going to see first is Jim Mutloo. He's been a residential realtor, he said, for 25 years. He met Brian through a leadership academy that they both did together. And Brian introduced him to Ana. Ana ultimately then went to work for Jim. They became very close friends. And in fact, he said he considered the entire family to be like his own family. His team sold multiple properties for the Walshes, and one of those sales closed just before December 29th, 2022. And Jim called Ana to congratulate her, a fateful call, because it would set in motion the process by which he would be the last person outside her family to see Ana Walsh alive. Now, she invited him over for New Year's Eve in the course of that conversation, but she also revealed some really critical information to him. And I don't know if I fully explained it, but the reason he called her was they had just closed one of the sales for her. She was going to reinvest the property. He was calling to tell her, good move. I really think that was smart. So, but what he also tried very hard to tell the jury was that Ana on the 29th in that phone call told him she was having problems in her marriage with Brian Walsh, but he's very precise. And he was saying she might not have used those exact words. It was more of a general impression he had based on what she was saying. But he wasn't allowed to give just his general impressions. He was supposed to be saying what she had said as an exception to the hearsay rule. So it was being admitted just for the limited purpose of coming in to explain Ana's state of mind. But so you can kind of hear the flavor, but I'll tell you what I think ultimately happened. So let's go ahead and get.
I'll tell you that she did say that at the time that they were having marital problems.
Objection, Your Honor. Characterization.
All right. I'll strike the characterization.
So the judge is saying, yeah, you can't do that. You can't just say, well, it was marital trouble, because he had already said in an earlier statement to the judge that he didn't know the exact words she had used. So they went round and round about this. I think, though, that the primary point was fully made to the jury. Ana told Jim on the 29th that she was having marital troubles with Brian, and she was concerned about some very specific things, like not being able to see her children because they were in Massachusetts with Brian. She was down in DC at her new job. He couldn't leave Massachusetts because of the pending federal art fraud case. And he had pled guilty, but nothing had been decided about his sentence. So he was in Massachusetts, required to be there. And he was only out of prison because so at least as they explained to the court, he was the primary caregiver for these children. And so he was awaiting the final decision about sentencing. Now, a lot of this didn't come in cleanly, but I think it came in loud and clear to the jury that what he heard was that there was trouble in paradise, that there was not a good, clean relationship between Ana and Brian, not at this time, that she was upset and there were problems. So now, as to what came in super clearly, he was the last person other than Brian to see Ana Walshe alive. No one else has come forward. We're not aware of anyone else, but Jim was there in the home on New Year's Eve, and he was there on the night as they celebrated New Year's Eve. Within an hour or two after he left, Ana disappeared and was never heard from again. So, we know from Brian's explanation in opening statement, his counsel said what he is going to contend is that she just suddenly died in bed. Jim left about 1 to 1:30. By 2:30, Brian had woken up and gone downstairs to clean the kitchen. And when he came back, Ana was dead in bed. That's what he claimed. That's his story. So to what happened on New Year's Eve, according to Jim, he got to the house about 8:30, and Ana came running out to greet him, no coat on, even though it was freezing, super happy to see him. And he became very emotional just at seeing the photograph of the place where they all gathered that night during Ana Walshe's final hours.
And so when you got inside, where did the three of you kind of socialize or congregate?
Sure. It was in the kitchen countertops. There was a large island.
And Ms. Gilman, could we have Exhibit 3? Sir, can you see that screen?
He can barely speak. I mean, he was
Showing, for the record,
Yes.
Exhibit 3 is on the screen.
Yeah,
You were nodding your head. Can you see it?
I can see it.
All right. What was Brian Walsh's demeanor like while the three of you were together?
He seemed fine. He seemed happy. Wow.
So everything seemed great that night. This is the Facebook side of the family, right? Ana Walshe, festive and happy. Brian seems happy. Everything is going swimmingly. Now, he knows from his conversation with her on the 29th that there's more going on under the surface. But on the 31st, everything seemed picture perfect. And Brian was even preparing the food and drinks for Jim and for Ana as they all sat there in the kitchen. At one point, the oldest child of the Walshes woke up. It came out and just warmly greeted Jim. It was obviously a very happy memory as he talked about it. And they all signed the champagne bottle. And here are probably the last words ever written by Ana Walshe.
2022, what a year. And yet we are still here and together. Let's make 2023 the best one yet. We are the authors of our lives. Courage, love, perseverance, compassion, and joy. Love, Ana.
Brian also wrote on the bottle or the box, he said, to the best triumvirate ever. And Jim wrote a message on the box, no place I'd rather be but here. And you could see all over his face that, wow, was that no longer the case? Because, of course, it's such a horrendous memory now that he knows that Ana is permanently gone. So the prosecution got Jim to say that Ana seemed fine that night in terms of health. He didn't see any injuries on her. He didn't have any reason to be concerned about how she was physically in terms of her health. And obviously the point of that is to undermine Brian Walsh's claim that within about an hour or so, she would just suddenly pass away in her bed. So this was the happy family photo, the Facebook side. Prosecution says this wasn't real. What was real was what was going on the 29th, or maybe both existed at once, but it was what happened on the 29th that ultimately led to what they say happened, which is Brian Walsh murdering his wife, Ana. So there was a little hint of that in one particular thing that Jim talked about. He said that Ana was texting and writing friends. It was New Year's Eve, everybody wishing everybody a happy New Year's. And there was one thing she said.
And I believe she said, let's take a photo for Will and send it to Will Fastow.
And the reason why that is sort of an important point is because we know now from testimony that Ana was having an affair with Will Fastow, that she actually was in a relationship with him. She had been with him just right before she flew home to be with the family on New Year's Eve. She had been with him on Christmas Eve, and Christmas morning she woke up with him. And all of that was because she was having an affair with him. She had spent Thanksgiving with him in Dublin, Ireland. And so here she is saying aloud, let's take a photo for Will. And she took a photo of her son, of Jim, and of herself, and she sent it to Will. I think the prosecution would like to suggest that somehow Brian found out about that. Somehow Brian either learned about the affair or it became confronted with it in such a way that he took action. He and Ana got into a fight, and that it may have all revolved around this message and the photograph that she sent to her lover, Will Fastow. But the defense pointed out, well, the Walshes were making really great money. They told Jim that in that evening. They were making, between the two of them, about $350,000 to $60,000, mostly from Ana, but also with a contribution from Brian. That the point, I think, of that was to undermine the claim that Brian had murdered Ana for money, that was a motive for him. Now, Brian did mention that night while they were all sitting around together that he had lost his phone. That is a really important point, because if he said that knowing that he had not lost his phone, then that suggests intent, planning, that he had the phone. He just seeded this little comment into the conversation that night so Jim would hear it. But in fact, he knew right where his phone was. He just wanted to not have it with him over the next few days while he bought all these cleaning supplies and while he disposed of Ana's body. I think the problem with that argument, and what I would expect that the defense will argue, is if that's the case, if in fact he was just planting this idea, he hadn't really lost his phone, he just wanted Jim to think that and maybe remember and tell the police that, and that would explain why he didn't have it with him. If that were true, well, why didn't he buy all these cleaning supplies in advance? I mean, why wait until after the murder to go out and buy your Tyvek suit and all that? Wouldn't you want all that in advance so you wouldn't have to deal with it afterwards? You could clean up really quickly and move on. It seems like it's a little bit of a hard sell from the prosecution side for the Commonwealth to argue this, because it doesn't really quite fit exactly with what he did afterwards. But there was testimony from a witness today that Brian was placing his phone in and out of service. He was plugging it in, he was charging it, which would suggest maybe he knew right where it was. And that's what the Commonwealth is arguing. Let's hear the witness.
At some point, He said that he had misplaced his phone, and I remember this vividly, that he said that it actually felt refreshing to be away from the phone for a little while.
So again, like I say, it does suggest that he took all of those trips afterwards for all the cleaning supplies and everything. Maybe it proved to be messier than he thought. I don't know exactly what the Commonwealth reasoning is, but he did all that afterwards instead of planning it in advance. Now, Jim said he left the Walsh home roughly 1 to 1:30. And while he was there, nobody mentioned that Ana had this work emergency and she was going to suddenly have to leave to go back to DC early the morning of the 1st. In other words, within hours of the time they were all gathering together. So on January 4th, he was stunned to get a phone call from Brian saying that Ana had gotten in an Uber to go to the airport to fly to DC for this work emergency, and she had been missing ever since.
I was incredulous. I said, what work emergency could there have been on New Year's Eve that, was commercial property? What could it be? I said, listen, did you guys have an argument or something? Did you have a fight?
And what was his response to that statement, sir?
His response was, I do remember this vividly as well. His response was, no, did it look like we had an argument? You were there.
So Brian didn't seem particularly panicked at the idea that Ana had been missing for 3.5 days, according to Jim. On cross, the defense tried to point out that Brian was truly supportive of Ana, that he had not been jealous in the past. And for example, when Jim was reluctant to have Ana leave him, of course, Ana was working for him, Ana, and she was about to go to DC for this great new job. And the Walshes had him over because he was so reluctant about this new job Ana had. And Brian told him, look, you've got to support her. And the plan, according to Jim and every witness we've heard from, was for the entire family to move down to DC. It wasn't just Ana. Brian was going to go. The boys were going to go. There was even testimony from Jim that Brian's mother was going to relocate and that his uncle already lived in DC. So they were really planning around this. So Jim said he actually was the one who connected Ana and Brian with William Fastow, the one that Ana ultimately would take up with in her affair. But he connected them because William dealt with real estate in the DC area. That's how Jim knew him. And they were looking to purchase a home since Ana was moving down to DC. However, this is what he said.
Ana Walsh never told you that she was romantically involved with Will Fastow.
No.
But likewise, he had to admit, or maybe in addition, that he never saw Brian and Ana argue. They seemed like a compatible, happy couple.
I don't recall having seen them argue. I always thought that there was a lot of love between them, and that she was very much in love with Brian.
And while you're
So that comment where Ana says she wants to text Will Fastow, we were kind of left up in the air. Was she trying to make Brian jealous? Is that what she was trying to do? And if so, it doesn't seem like, at least in front of Jim, that it landed. Here's what he
sitting
said.
in that kitchen, the three of you, at some point she says, let's send a picture to Will.
I believe that's what she said. I'm not 100% sure.
But this happened early in the evening, he said, and he stayed for hours after that. And at no point was there some dispute between Ana and Brian. They didn't go off together and have an argument, anything like that. Everything seemed normal and happy the rest of the evening. Now, when Brian called him on the 4th to tell him that Ana was missing, the whole thing made no sense to him.
You were there until 1:30. They weren't arguing.
They weren't arguing, no.
You said the night was joyful.
That's correct.
They were happy.
That's correct.
And from everything you saw and what you've told us, they were in love.
Well, they were happy is a loaded statement, I think. I mean, they seemed happy that night, but people are complex. There was a good mood
Which is certainly the case. Let's
that night.
You never saw them argue, right?
I did not. she told me that there were cracks in the relationships. And I don't know which words.
So let's scoot on till we get a better picture. Okay, there we go. Okay, let me stop it there. So he said there was a good mood that night. He didn't see them argue and said that, but on the 29th, Ana had told him the relationship had problems. Here's what he said. She told me that there were cracks in the relationship. And I don't know which words she may have used, precisely those words. She gave me information that she was having problems in her marriage with Brian. Now, there was an objection at that point, and the judge was requested to strike it, ask the witness, well, what did she say to you? And all he could say was, I don't recall the exact words. But I think the message got through to the jury, probably loud and clear, that she was having trouble, and she said that. If anything, that was increased and borne out by the next witness. We'll hear from that hear from her in just a minute. Let me change this, do a little summary of what happened in between, and we'll get straight into that next witness, Ana Walsh's very close personal friend. So at this point, we got several other videos, once again showing us Brian, man about town, going out and buying things in the days following what the prosecution says is the murder of Ana Walsh. So we had a video of him throwing out things in another apartment complex dumpster on January 3rd at 5:11 p.m. It was not a great video. It kind of skipped around, but you could see him, or you could see a car like the one he drove pull in, and you can see somebody, then there's a gap, and then someone walks back and gets in the car. There was also another video of someone buying huge amounts of cleaning supplies. And honestly, he probably should have had one of those YouTube channels about extreme cleaning and film like these are cleaning supply hauls, because January 2nd included not just, there have been now 2 enormous cleaning supply hauls. And this one was large buckets, a mop, $453 in cash, lots of things. We had TJ Maxx with Brian buying pants and socks and so forth. And then they put in the federal probation officer for Brian Walsh. Now, the probation officer made it really clear that Brian was on probation. And all of these videos that we've seen of him out and about, well, that really wasn't supposed to be happening. He was supposed to be on house arrest, only allowed out for necessary things that he had to do. And he had to get permission for those in advance. So he wasn't supposed to be just running out doing miscellaneous shopping for large hauls of cleaning supplies at Home Depot and Lowe's. He wasn't supposed to be out at TJ Maxx and Home Goods, but he went to all of those. We've seen the video. He was, and even if he had been out doing that, even if it had been necessary, it was supposed to be approved in advance, and none of it was. So we got and then let's move on to that other witness, Ana's really close personal friend, because we got another picture of the not for Facebook side of the Walsh family. What the prosecution says is the ultimate motive behind why Brian Walsh would murder his wife. It was an unfiltered view from a woman named Alyssa Kirby. Now, what Alyssa said, she'd been friends with Ana since she moved to DC. They struck up a very fast friendship. And on December 25th, she got a call from Brian, Christmas Day. And what Brian told her was that Ana had not shown up for Christmas. And Brian was very worried. She was so was Alyssa. She was getting dressed to go down and look at the townhouse. Ana lived near her and see if maybe Ana was there. Was everything okay? And just as she was getting dressed, Brian let her know, okay, it's all right. Ana reached out to me. She's okay. Now, what this witness told the jury was that while Ana, who was driving home to Massachusetts, while she was driving home, Ana called her and they talked for about 20 minutes. And Ana was super angry because Brian had overreacted and reached out to Alyssa to say that Ana was missing. But you have to kind of step back and realize what was going on, because this, I think, kind of moves in Brian's favor, not in terms of the murder, but just in terms of the facts. So, in fact, Ana was having an affair. And in fact, she had spent Christmas Eve with her lover and woken up there. And she missed her morning flight, not by her own fault, but she missed her morning flight home to home to Massachusetts, because of the fact that it was canceled. There was bad weather. So ultimately, sometime around noon, it sounds like, she got in the car and drove up to Massachusetts. But meanwhile, Brian and the boys were expecting her home for Christmas, and she didn't show up. So it's not really surprising that Brian would have been upset, and kind of shocking, really, that Ana was angry about this and reached out to Alyssa. How dare Brian call around and look for me? Because I think most people would be alarmed if someone didn't show up for Christmas Day with their small children. But later, in between Christmas and New Year's, when Ana was back in DC and at the office, Alyssa and Ana went out to a karaoke bar. It was a karaoke dance bar, she said. And Ana danced. Ana seemed really healthy, but Alyssa had some information about how upset she was. Let's hear that.
Because of what happened after Christmas, she was really upset. She was kind of breaking down because everything had been really hard, which Ana was always a very strong person, so that was very unusual for her. And she was just really upset about so much. She had really hit a breaking point. She was primarily upset about her and Brian's relationship, about being so far away from the kids, and feeling like she was upset having found out that the federal case was delayed, or she thought that the federal case was delayed by Brian, and that she just really wanted to be with her kids. Their marriage had been really strained for a long time, and she was really at a breaking point.
Jurors, I'm going to remind you that the statements that are being offered with regard to Ana Walsh's state of mind are admissible, again, limited to establishing her state of mind, as is relevant to the defendant's motive to kill. To the extent that such state of mind evidence includes statements describing the defendant's federal case, Ana's statements are admitted only to show the defendant's motive and not to show that he had a bad character or propensity to commit any criminal offense.
So Ana, according to the witness, really wanted Brian to take responsibility, to step up and just take some responsibility for the criminal charges in the art fraud case. And I think from what the witness explained, the witness was saying that Ana had come to the point where she thought the tax on the family was too much, but that, yeah, it would be great for Brian not to have to go to prison, but keeping Ana from her children, keeping the children in Boston when, in fact, Ana had already moved to DC. All of this had gotten to be too much. And multiple delays on the sentencing meant that this separation between Ana and her children had gone on and on and on. And maybe it was just time for Brian to actually deal with the problem. And maybe it would mean he had to go to prison.
Wanted that whole process to be over, and she wanted him to be responsible, be accountable, and do whatever he had to do to keep their family together.
And what did she mean? What did she tell you that she meant by the word responsibility?
Yeah, at that point in time, responsibility was potentially just taking jail time and admitting wrongdoing and just owning a mistake, and so that their family, that she would be waiting for them and that their family could be together.
Did she give you specifics of what she had told you about the amount of time?
I think it was all an estimate, but at the time she thought maybe a year.
I think what she's saying is a year for him to spend in prison, that she thought that would be about the sentence he would receive. I wasn't clear on that, what exactly she was referring to. But In any event, Ana seemed to be okay with the concept of Brian spending some amount of time in prison and thought he really ought to do that. He ought to step up and do that because the problems being created for the family were not only excessive, but they were unfair, given that it was Brian who created the problem and Brian's art fraud, not anybody else's in the family and not their responsibility. And it does sound like she suggested to Alyssa that she was at least considering divorcing Brian.
Because of how difficult things were, she was contemplating what that could mean legally being able to take her children to Washington, D.C. And also the physical separation from a husband was very difficult for her.
What, if anything, did she tell you about having established a separate household?
Oh, that she had told me that everything was set up in her name, the house in Washington, D.C., and the bills were, everything was in her name.
You had mentioned that Ana
And let me stop right there for just a second. And so Ana also told Alyssa that Ana and Brian had not been intimate for over a year. And Ana did not reveal anything about her relationship with William Fastow, but she did talk about him a fair amount.
had a friend named William Fastow.
Yes.
Okay. And I think you told us that she shared with you that she had a crush on him.
Yes.
And she told you that she told her husband that she had a crush on him.
Yes.
And that Ana, when she was talking about sharing that with her husband, that they always had an open, honest relationship.
Yes, that was what she said.
Okay. And in that conversation, when she was telling you about how she had told her husband about having a crush on Will, that Brian wasn't the jealous type.
When she told me that, I was surprised, and she said that was their relationship. They were open, and that he wasn't jealous.
And not only was he not jealous, that she kind of wished he was a little more jealous.
I think in the way that a wife would want a husband to be protective, yes.
Okay. And during the time you were friends in DC with Ana, and during these conversations, she never told you that she was having a romantic relationship with Will Fastow.
Not specifically, no.
During this,
So the defense is suggesting, okay, if Ana isn't telling anybody about this relationship and Brian hasn't shown any kind of really jealous side in the past, in fact, he wasn't jealous at all, then what would suddenly cause him to fly into a jealous rage when he wasn't that kind of person? So that's what the defense, I think, is trying to argue. The defense also wanted to talk about the idea that maybe Ana was sick. They were trying to suggest that maybe she had some illness, some underlying problem that could explain why she would suddenly die. That's obviously the defense theory of the case.
conversation on the 29th, Ana had said that lately she was just feeling drained of energy, right?
Drained of energy just due to everything going on, yeah.
Okay. And she had also told you that she was someone that would stay up late and get up early in the morning, right?
She just was a very energetic, passionate person.
And towards the end of December, there was a shift, there was a change in that.
Yes.
And she told you that she was falling asleep earlier and getting up later, and that was unusual for her.
Yeah.
What?
So all of that sounds kind of more like just a little depression with all that was going on and not like a true underlying physical illness. But the defense did point out that Ana canceled plans with Alyssa on December 20th because she wasn't feeling well. Now, that's 11 days before she supposedly passed away just suddenly in the bed. But that is the argument that the defense is going to make in what we're going to be hearing tomorrow, starting with the defense case. But clearly, from what Alyssa had been told, the relationship between Ana and Brian was at least strained. And this, I thought, was particularly important testimony right here.
Did she tell you about if she loved the defendant, Brian Walsh?
She told me that he would often not tell her he loved her and would always ask her how much she was in love with him, and that she told me that this time she answered not as much because of everything that had happened. And yeah, that she was falling out of love.
And on
Okay, let's just have a gigantic red flag, shall we? For someone who doesn't tell you that they love you and instead asks how much you're in love with them. That's like, whoa. So, but that's what she says, Alyssa says, is how Ana described the relationship. That how much are you in love with me was the most important question for Brian, as opposed to him telling Ana that he loved her. This led, or at least was part of, a huge shift in the relationship between the two, as per what Ana was telling Alyssa. And to the extent that Ana was even saying maybe she didn't love Brian anymore. All of that could lead, says the prosecution, to Brian's decision, his motive to murder his wife. And let's go on talking a little bit about the health.
December 29th of 2022, how did she physically appear to you?
Tired.
And on December 29th of 2022, did you go out to karaoke?
Yes.
And did she go dancing?
Yeah, it was karaoke dancing.
So at this point, the Commonwealth rested. The Commonwealth rested its case today. Now we'll talk, let me go ahead and take a few of the comments over here in the super chats that have come in, talk a little bit about that. But I want to get into what the arguments were, because you are finally going to see the Commonwealth unveil the exact argument it has for arguing that Brian Walsh premeditated the murder of Ana Walsh, that there was malice aforethought. That's absolutely essential. If the Commonwealth is going to convict Brian Walsh for the murder of Ana Walsh, it has to prove that. And we finally have their exact outline. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But let me say thank you to Agenda Bomb, telling everybody like and subscribe. Much appreciated. If you have not hit the like button, please do. That really does help the video. Pippa Scott Music is saying it's a very hard sell that he didn't kill her, but could dismember her body. And that does seem incredibly difficult, because it's such a violation. It's difficult to picture someone who could do that, but at the same time had nothing to do with the murder. But that's what he's telling the jury. That's exactly what his defense case will be all about. And she points out, shows he could cut up the body of the woman he loved. And I think he's going to have to own that. I wondered if maybe he'll say he bought all those things and then decided he just couldn't do it. And who knows, this may go into pro gamer's point. I don't know. I hope you can see that. The video, let's try this. There we go. I think you can see it now. Pro Gamer wants to know, what do you think about 2 Tyvek suits, one for Brian and one for, could it be for Ana? That's what Pro Gamer is suggesting. Maybe that's what he'll say. Maybe he'll say he put her in the Tyvek suit. He couldn't cut her up, which would leave some real questions around why there was DNA of Ana on some of those items, and why they have been so thoroughly cleaned with cleaning products. Why would that be necessary if in fact he never used them on Ana? So who knows? I can tell you, I want to see the cross-examination of Brian Walsh. I cannot wait for that. It is going to be absolutely incredible. And dial in for Mildred saying absolutely nothing Ana did could ever justify or excuse what Brian Walsh did to her. Fact, not just fact in general terms, but it's a fact legally. None of that. And yet they do seem to have really gone into things that Ana had done that might upset the jury or make the jury mad. We've gotten a fair amount of that. The saddest part about crimes like this is the victim's voice is taken. So true. And she can't defend herself. Good point. Thank you, dial in for Mildred. All right, so thank you to all of those. And let's get into what the Commonwealth argued, because they argued that there was, let me back up. First, the defense argued that the Commonwealth had not proven the case. What they wanted was for the judge to say, you're right, I'm dismissing the entire case against Brian Walsh. that was probably never going to happen. But what they focused on was some very issues we have talked about since the beginning of the trial. Can the Commonwealth prove premeditation and a specific intent to kill Ana Walsh? Or was this something that either, as Brian says, sudden death, or was it just something that happened unexpectedly? Maybe she attacked him first. Maybe it was self-defense. But has the Commonwealth proven that there was this malice aforethought, things he thought about in advance, premeditation? And the defense says no. And that's what they argued to the judge. Here is the Commonwealth's response, listing all of the reasons, or at least many of them, why they think they've proven that. And you can hear the Commonwealth set it out.
Your Honor, as to evidence that the defendant killed Ana Walsh, the defendant was the only adult in the house on January 1st after Mr. Mutloo left. There's evidence before the court that Ana was a fit and active 39-year-old, and in fact that she participated in a vigorous exercise class at Bar Method on the 31st of December, where she demonstrated that she was in good physical condition. Evidence of the bloody slippers, bloody bath towels, bloody carpet, Ana's broken Gucci necklace, combined with the defendant's internet searches about cleaning blood from wood floors, his purchase of large quantities of cleaning products, are sufficient for the jury to find that Ana met a violent death in the living quarters. I'd also point out there was a cut on the defendant's thumb, and there was evidence that he did purchase Band-Aids and some antibiotic cream on January 1st. As to deliberate premeditations, there's evidence that the defendant was aware of Ana's relationship with another man. He told police that he monitored the Chase credit card statement. That is an evidence before the court. That statement includes a purchase of a plane ticket to Dublin in Thanksgiving, over the Thanksgiving holiday in 2022. The defendant was aware of Ana's itinerary. He told police that he had suggested that she go out during a layover in Frankfurt, which she did have a layover in Frankfurt at one point of that travel. And again, looking at that travel, it's clear that looking at the Chase statement that it was indicated a trip to Dublin. And the defendant told police that she had only gone to Serbia to see her mother. And I suggest the evidence is more than sufficient to find that he was aware of that trip to Dublin.
So as to that, it does seem to me really odd that if he knew about this trip to Dublin, he never once mentioned it to Ana. Because on the 29th, when she was telling everybody about the problems she was having with him, it seems like she could have said, and he's really upset with me. He's found out about this. I think this might break us up, something like that. She didn't say anything about Will Fastow, and nor apparently did he say anything to her. And that does seem odd to me. And he didn't say anything. This was all the way back at Thanksgiving. So he didn't say anything apparently then. He didn't say anything at Christmas, even though she didn't show up. And he didn't say anything then when it came time for New Year's Eve, at least not until maybe in the early morning hours.
He also searched Will Fastow's name on December 25th, and he also researched emergencies in buildings that Ana managed in D.C. I'd also point out that the defendant's phone, which he said was mislaid from December 31st to January 2nd, he told Mr. Mutloo that when Mr. Mutloo came for the New Year's Eve dinner. That phone was repeatedly unlocked and connected to a power source while it was supposedly missing. The evidence indicates that the defendant used that phone to create an alibi for himself. It explains why he was not contacting Ana. And then when he did say he recovered the phone, he started sending text messages to Ana, and he later showed those messages to police. It suggests he was using the missing phone as a way to create an alibi for himself. And to explain...
You can see in each of these cases where the defense will say, look, he lost his phone. His kid ran off with it. But there is a response the state has.
And why there was no, he didn't have the phone with him when he went to Vin and Liquors and threw something into the dumpster, or when he was in Lowe's buying cleaning supplies and cutting tools on January 1st. Your Honor, there's also ample evidence of motive. There's evidence that the jury can find that if Ana took the children to D.C., the possibility of the defendant avoiding jail time on the federal charges would lessen. We heard testimony today about the impact of that on Ana and what she intended to do. Ana also had life insurance policies and financial accounts, which the defendant was the named beneficiary, and he stood to inherit substantial funds if Ana Walsh were deceased. And also, Your Honor, the defendant's elaborate web of lies regarding Ana allegedly leaving for a work emergency in DC. He lied to friends, family, and the police about that.
And there's nothing he can say about that. Why? Because he pled guilty to that. He pled guilty to lying to the police. He has acknowledged and admitted that that's exactly what he did. So he is stuck with that. Now, as to some of these issues, like, for example, the phone, the prosecution, the Commonwealth says that that phone was plugged and unplugged and manipulated during the period of time when he says it was missing. And although a kid might pick it up and run around the house with it, it does seem kind of unlikely that a kid would plug it in to charge it. So I think that's the argument being made by the Commonwealth. The judge, very unsurprisingly, went with the Commonwealth on this and explained why. Here you
Our
have it.
standard dictates that I take every inference, all the evidence and all the reasonable inferences from that evidence in the light most favorable to the Commonwealth. Adopting that standard, I'm not convinced by the defendant's motion.
We did
So let's stop there. I want to, I'll talk a little bit about, there were several really unusual, kind of weird parts to the testimony of Mutloo that just didn't really seem to make sense and didn't really fit. For one, he went on and on about what a great relationship he and Ana had, and they had been close for a long time. But then he talked about a disagreement in the fall of 2021 when she responded to him in a passive aggressive way. And he apparently reached out to friends, including Brian, to figure out what exactly he should do. And he ended up doing what the defense called suspending her with pay. And what the witness said was really just asking her to take a break. But he said they stayed friends throughout that. There was another little weird segment about how Jim and Ana behaved at one of the hearings about Brian's federal art auction. Now, apparently, Jim went to support both Brian and Ana, and he, at one point, held hands with Ana, he said, to support her and to show that he cared about her. It was a very stressful time, but Ana's mother, sorry, not Ana's mother, Brian's mother sitting nearby saw that, and apparently, according to what Ana told Jim, wasn't happy that they had been holding hands at Brian's hearing. And then there was a third weird point where, and you'll almost have to listen to it. I'll put this back. I'll have to try to scoot up a little bit.
declaration or
Okay.
I'm gonna move up a little. Let's see if that's far enough.
recall Ana telling me that she had a crush on me.
So the first statements, I'm pretty close to the point, she said, the defense lawyer asking the question said, and at some point while Ana was working for you, she confessed that she had a crush on you. And he says, I don't recall Ana telling me, and we'll tell you what, we'll back up just a tiny bit.
Declaration or
Okay.
And at some point, while Ana was working for you,
Yep, that's it.
she confessed that she had a crush on you.
recall Ana telling me that she had a crush on me.
When you were working together and Ana was there, you had mentioned that you had other people working with you and for you.
That's correct.
And at some point, you developed a close relationship with another female coworker,
That's correct.
and I'm assuming it became romantic.
Objection.
Sustained.
So you don't have any memory of Ana Walsh telling you that at some point she was a little jealous of that coworker and had a crush?
Objection.
Sustained.
She developed feelings for you.
Objection.
Sustained.
Ana Walsh told you that she told her husband that she had a crush
I'll
on
see you at
you.
the side of the bench.
So
I will
as
tell
you
you
can
that
hear
she
from that,
did
we'll
say
stop it there. But the judge was obviously not happy with that. I was really curious as to why exactly the defense was doing this. It seems like it's more aimed at the idea that Ana is a bad person. Maybe the idea that Ana was trying to taunt Brian with her other relationships or with how she had a crush on other people. Maybe she was trying to spark jealousy in him when she felt like he wasn't having enough. But the problem with even making that argument is that Brian says she died suddenly in the night while they had a very happy marriage. So why even put all of this in? Why would the defense want the jury thinking about whether or not Ana was trying to create jealousy or whether or not she had crushes on other men? I mean, how does that help the defense? I haven't really figured that out. And so I don't know exactly why they'll be doing that, but I hope we will find out tomorrow when the defense case starts. I cannot wait for what exactly is going to happen. I have another, let's take some questions. If you have a question, if you would put question marks at the beginning of your question, it'll help me spot it in the chat. But let me also thank Pro Gamer for the second super chat. And Pro Gamer is saying, wait, Lee, you misunderstood what I was asking about the Tyvek suit. Maybe one for Brian and one for Brian's mother, not for Ana. So as far as Brian's mother, there were some mentions today of things related to Brian's murder, but at no point that I'm aware of has the Commonwealth said anything about her being involved or having anything to do with the murder, and they haven't taken pains to show she was in the area or over at the home at any of this time. In fact, from what we understood, she wasn't there on New Year's Eve. I don't know whether she would have come over the next day, but it sounded like Brian was doing driving for her. I don't know how much she even drove. And there was no testimony that he drove. Well, there was testimony that he drove to his mother's house on the 1st, now that you mentioned that. But I don't think there's anything to make us think that the Tyvek suit was for her. But I see your point. Why have two? I guess my thought was just, being extra careful if he tore one or got one dirty, he could use a second one. But I don't know. There's not been any allegation about that. So that's about all I can say about that. That's an interesting point about why exactly there were two. I think you have an important question. So Divine Inhale with Donna says, does the jury know he pleads guilty to anything already? I don't believe so. The defense wanted the jury to know about that. The prosecution objected. The judge said that would come up later and she would make a final decision about that at some later point. And I haven't heard, unless there's been a ruling at sidebar, I haven't heard the judge say anything about which way she was going to rule on that. Would it come in or not? Now, the jury does know the facts that Brian admitted. In other words, from opening statement on, the jury's been told, yep, Brian, the first words, Brian lied to the police. That's the very first thing the defense said in the opening statement. So they know all about that. And they also know that Brian disposed of the body, but they don't know any details about it. And they don't yet know that this involved that I know of yet. They are not aware that this involved a plea of guilty to those two charges. So the judge was saying it didn't seem right to put that in when the jury is not supposed to consider the penalty for any other claim or any other crime. In fact, they're not even supposed to consider the penalty for this crime, the crime of murder. They're supposed to leave all of that up to the judge. So she said, I don't really see why it's relevant. Okay. Do you think the defense was trying to find something that would be an aha moment? Asked Karen O2. Karen, every lawyer looks for that all the time. I'm sure they would have loved to have found that. That would definitely be important, but I don't think they really got any of that today. In fact, I don't think there's been any of that really in the case. There's a lot less of that with discovery because the two sides exchange information in advance. So it's not as common, but it does still happen. MEP, could the prior threat to Ana and her friend years prior show he had considered murder meeting premeditation? So there has been no evidence at all in the case about any prior threats to Ana. And in fact, as long as Brian doesn't make comments like, I never threatened her, I never did anything to her, then probably that won't come in. Almost surely it was whatever happened was so long ago and so disconnected that the judge said, I'm not going to let that in. I imagine that it will not come in at this trial. All right, I think we covered it. Now, tomorrow night, please tune in because we are going to be covering the very first day of the defense case. And there's no way around it. This has to be dramatic because we will be finding out how exactly the defense plans to carry this defense forward, because it is not going to be an easy defense. They are going straight for that premeditation intent that they talked about with the judge. The judge said, look, if I look at everything in favor of the Commonwealth, I can't say it would be impossible for a jury to find this. No reasonable jury could believe that. I can't say that. So I'm going to let the jury decide. But they think they, or at least want to persuade the jury otherwise. So don't forget, tune in. It will probably be, once again, 7:15-ish. Takes a little while after court ends for me to be able to get everything all together for you. But I will look forward to seeing you then. Please hit like and subscribe on the way out, and I will see you in the next video.